Hello again, everybody. Gary Furman and Stephen Wagner here, and we are talking about Miami's big commitment from one Thomas Gore, the Georgia State transfer defensive tackle, who's going to roll right into Coral Gables and fill an even bigger hole that was left by Darrell Jackson's transfer to Florida State. And Stephen, look, I'm not going to oversell this. Thomas Gore is a 6', 275-pound defensive tackle. He was a 3-star coming out of high school. He ended up going to college at Georgia State. Was a very productive player at Georgia State. Doesn't play a position where you're going to have all kind of spectacular highlights or stats or anything like that. He is a space eater in the middle of the defensive line, and you have to look at him and evaluate him in that regard. But Miami is in the market for this right now because it's a hole in the roster. And Thomas Gore came to Mario Cristobal's recommendation, we believe, from his nephew, who goes head-to-head with Thomas Gore every single day in practice at Georgia State. Louis Cristobal, that is, who's an offensive lineman for Georgia State. And so it wasn't hard to get a really good scouting report on what kind of player Thomas Gore was if you're the Miami Hurricanes. And they clearly liked what they were hearing, liked what they saw on tape. They went after him, and now that has come together into a commitment. So, Stephen, you've had a chance to review a bunch of tape on Thomas Gore. Your initial thoughts on this new commitment from the transfer portal for Miami?
My first thought whenever I saw his tape is, how are more schools not really after him? Because he told me that the 3 schools that he was really considering were Miami first, North Carolina second, and Kansas State third. And it was really kind of between Miami and North Carolina to end up landing his commitment. But we talked about this a second ago. He's not really a glamorous jump off the page Aaron Donald, make all the highlight type players, but he's a space eater. He eats double teams. He commands so much attention on the interior of that defensive line. And every single, I think, team in America has a space for someone who is willing to command that level of attention, really make things hard on offensive linemen to reach the second level, get up to those linebackers. And he was a really, really highly graded player by Pro Football Focus. And for good reason. He has a lot of talent. I think he was massively overlooked. Like I just said a second ago, it shocked me that he did not have way more attention on him coming out of Georgia State whenever he decided to enter the transfer portal. He mostly played nose in this 3-4 defense. They'd sometimes
number 59, by the way, for people that aren't noticing his number there in the middle of the Georgia State line. They're in white right now.
Yeah, he mostly played nose in their 3-4 scheme. Would sometimes be put on the edge in some pass rushing situations, but for the most part, was really just a space eater for the Panthers. And he told me that one of the things that he really liked about Miami was the opportunity to play in a defense that features 4 down defensive linemen, because he feels like that's going to give him more opportunities. It's going to give him more chances to make plays, because whenever he's in that 3-4, his entire responsibility as a defensive lineman was really just eat space, command as much attention as you can, because you only have 3 down defensive linemen. And so you really need someone who can take that double team away to be able to free up, or to be able to command that double team, to be able to free up linebackers as free rushers. He does seem like he may be a little bit undersized, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people in the past. I'm definitely not comparing him to Aaron Donald, because I don't think anyone should be compared to Aaron Donald.
No, but he's definitely not Aaron Donald. I love your youthful enthusiasm, but he's definitely not Aaron Donald.
But Aaron Donald is not a massively big guy. A really good and underrated defensive tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, Poona Ford, is another guy who's really undersized. I don't think he's 6 feet tall either. But that ability to just understand how to eat space, there is always going to be a place for somebody like that on a Division I roster, because every team needs a guy who's just willing to get in there and do the dirty work. They don't have to have all the stats. They don't have to, have a Sports Center top 10 highlight reel to be able to have a really positive impact on their team.
Now, something I noticed when I was watching this film is I think he's going to have to learn to play with a greater motor. He's not going to have to be a full-time defensive tackle at Miami the way he was at Georgia State. They are going to be able to rotate him in and out. And he's going to have to learn to go harder on the plays that he's in the game. There were a lot of plays I watched where it kind of like looked like he was just kind of like standing there and not really, exerting a whole lot of effort. And that's not going to fly at Miami. But like you said, he is a space eater. He's a big, strong kid who's only going to get stronger. And when you look at the need at defensive tackle for Miami, for that guy that can fill that Darrell Jackson kind of role, Harrison Hunt is not really that kind of tackle. Leonard Taylor is not really that kind of tackle. There's really nobody else in the recruiting class that's that kind of tackle. They need defensive tackles who can eat up space on the interior. And that's why they're reaching out for Thomas Gore. And that's why he is now a Miami Hurricane. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think you really nailed it perfectly. He's not going to be a game wrecker. He is not going to be that guy who just jumps out and wows everybody, and everybody just can't stop talking about Thomas Gore. But there's absolutely a space for this type of player who is willing to play that kind of role that can be a little bit underappreciated by some fans. The guy who gets in there, he does the dirty work, he sets his teammates up for success. I think that's the kind of guy that he can be. I think he is capable of being an every down defensive lineman if, like you said, he can kind of get that motor going a little bit. But I do think that this is a good pickup for Miami, and I do think it's going to pay dividends for them this season.
Yeah, I don't see them asking him to be an every down defensive lineman. I think this will just be a rotation guy, one of 4, 5, 6 guys that rotate in and out of games, keep guys fresh. You'll be able to use them in short yardage situations, things like that. I don't think they will ask too much out of a 3-star transfer from Georgia State, but it's a good move for Thomas Gore. It gets him into a higher level of football, and it's a win-win for the Miami Hurricanes as well. So good things all around on this commitment for Thomas Gore. If you like this content and like our YouTube channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube. If you are not yet a subscriber to canesport.com, please join us. We still got that $10 introductory special going. That will take you to the start of the 2023 football season, when Thomas Gore hopefully will be wreaking some havoc in the middle of the Hurricanes defensive line. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Furman. Thank you for joining us today, everybody.